Dartmoor can be a pretty eerie place at times. Listen to this. Do you hear that? Exactly, unsettling silence. Is it a special landscape that needs preserving at all costs, or a nature desert? Should these bleak hills remain a monument to the past, or should we be looking forward to exploiting the potential of this place? Just a few of the deep questions that I'll be flippantly brushing over in this, the latest episode of the Dartmoor podcast. Welcome back, everyone. On a sparklingly clear, cold winter's day, I set out on a very long trek over the South Moor. I'd been enticed by some strange features that jumped out to me when idly scrolling the satellite imagery on Google Maps. What was this, for instance? And this? And what about this volcano-like mount? My first problem, if you could call it that, was that the day was just a constant array of ever-increasing beauty. I'd stop to capture some wondrous landscape in the bright, slow November sun, then 5 minutes along the path find something even more magical and have to stop again. If I was going to make it to the Dartmoor Volcano and back before dark, I'd need to stop getting distracted. First there were the views of the South Moorland fringes, then there was this absurdly clear stream burbling along. Then the stunning views down towards South Brent, with 3 barrows high on the hill above. Bronze Age remains like this cairn were everywhere, reminding me that these hills haven't always been so deserted. And not just in prehistory. My next unavoidable object of beauty was Spurrell's Cross, a medieval monument used by monks as a navigational aid when travelling across the moor. Eventually though, thank goodness, the wondrous sights died down a bit and I was left slogging through emptiness. Now, anyone familiar with Dartmoor will notice there is something wrong with this scene. The path is not only visible, but broad, flat and well surfaced. And that's because this is the remains of a railway track, and it'll lead me along 8 miles to the Dartmoor Volcano. Let that sink in for a second. Someone went to the effort of building a steam train out to the middle of nowhere. Why? And what happened to it? Well, the answer lies in an ill-fated attempt to mine clay from a desolate spot called Red Lake Mire, right in the centre of the South Moor. And the train wasn't even for transporting the clay. It was a commuter train, carrying about 100 workmen to the clay pits each morning, along with coal and supplies. This whole seemingly insane scheme was started in 1905, when 2 Plymouth businessmen wanted in on the clay mining industry, but were scuppered by all the obvious mining locations on the southwest fringe of the moor already being purchased. China clay was big business here in the West Country, as the kaolin formed from weathered granite is of extremely good quality. After a bit of searching and surveying, it was realised that the area around Red Lake would be capable of producing over £3 million worth of China clay, and that the infrastructure needed to extract it would cost about £27,000. Maybe this wasn't such a crazy idea after all. But the business, imaginatively called China Clay Corporation Limited, certainly didn't have it all their own way, facing stiff local opposition to their project, which means they didn't get the railway and subsequently the mine up and running until 1911. With a fair few miles behind me, I began to find evidence of industry all along the path, like these pipes which used the natural slope to carry the soft clay all the way back to Ivy Bridge. Here and there, little concrete bridges were made to carry the pipes over the remains of even earlier mining efforts, networks of deep, steep-sided ditches dug by the tinners of centuries past. And there were glimpses of what was to come at Left Lake Mires, the site of a clay mine which predates the larger operation at Red Lake. The pit from which the kaolin was extracted now being a small lake, and the waste material forming this little mound next to the railway bridge. But some of the most incongruous and unusual features were yet to come. There's something very eerie about stumbling upon the foundations of buildings all the way out here. These are the remnants of a building where wet clay would be left to settle and dry out a bit before being piped down towards Ivy Bridge. The landscape itself is so bleak here that it's hard to say it's an eyesore, but these crumbling geometric blocks of concrete and iron really have an aura of sadness about them. A failed dream, a gamble that didn't pay off. And these ghosts of the past got me thinking about the future. Plymouth, just visible in the distance here, is due to become a freeport, a new government scheme to deregulate industry in certain areas. This could, theoretically, encourage business growth with lower taxes and fewer regulations on imports. But on the other hand, part of the appeal to those businesses will be the lack of environmental and building regulations. And here's what's worrying me. When you look at the boundary of the proposed Plymouth Freeport, it rather sneakily, no, in fact rather blatantly, stretches out from Plymouth to encompass the whole of Dartmoor National Park. Does this mean there's a plan to open up the moor to development and industry again? I'm sure it's no coincidence that Dartmoor has recently been found to hold large quantities of lithium, a rare element used in the manufacture of batteries, right at the time when the world is attempting to shift towards electric vehicles. Anyway, look at these weird old structures, apparently used to separate sand and grit from the mined clay. Don't they look like giant sarcophaguses? Sarcophagi? Sarcophapodes? Whatever. All of this in just about the most inaccessible and desolate place it could be. It's even hidden in the crease of the map. And from here, finally, a glimpse of the Dartmoor Volcano. A huge pile of waste material from the mining process at Red Lake itself. This pile was called the Sky Tip, which is, perhaps impossibly, an even cooler name than the Dartmoor Volcano. Look at it looming out of the landscape like Mount Doom over there. As you get closer though, you realise that, though large, it isn't quite as impressive a size as it looks from a distance. One of those strange Dartmoor optical illusions where distance and scale and perspective all get warped by the pixies. Sadly for China Clay Corporation Limited, the Great War put a dampener on their schemes as soon as it got going. And even after the war had ended, it was found that the clay from here wasn't of quite as good a quality as they'd hoped. The business limped on until 1932, when it closed for good. In time, everything of value, including the trains, was sold as scrap, and the army demolished everything else. Amazing, though, to think that this was once a bustling place. Workers would arrive on the train and extract clay from this now flooded pit by blasting it with hoses. There was a canteen and a bunkhouse, offices, a blacksmith's, and an engine room powering the winches that hauled wagons full of waste material to the top of the Sky Tip. And that's where I'm headed. It would be remiss of me to trek all the way out here and not have a look at the view from the top. Nothing besides remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Hey, don't those reservoirs look like a willy? A bit more poking about, then it was time for the long return walk to civilization. If only there was some sort of train to take me back. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you know more than me, which wouldn't take much, about the freeport proposals or lithium mining and what this might mean for Dartmoor, let me know in the comments. Thanks again. See you next time.